This is one of those moments. You gotta ask yourself, what kind of life do I want? The world ain't built for guys like us. That's why we gotta take whatever we decide is ours. It was Carmine Falcone's right hand. Trying to push me out. Whoa, whoa, hey, hey! You ain't seen what I can do. If you step out of line, even once, I'll gut you like a goddamn fish. Can you imagine the people saying my name in the streets after you're gone? Have it mean something? The new kingpin of Gotham.
What was exciting to me was to tell a Gotham story. I wanted this all to be a kind of crime tapestry, a crime saga.
Matt talked to me a lot about what he was trying to depict in Gotham as a city, Gotham as a character, and Oz is just a normal man who is underestimated and wants more for himself.
We really get to dig in and get to explore his life, and his history plays a huge part in the unfolding of our tale. The story we're telling feels like a very human story.
We wanted to depict class disparity in Gotham. Batman is up high looking down at the city, but Oz is down on the ground looking up, wanting to get up there to that penthouse.
The story picks up right at the end of the Batman. The Riddler has blown up the seawall. So there's been a lot of flooding all throughout Gotham City, and Gotham is really a disaster zone. We decided that we would kind of descend through the Gotham from the film into the dirty, less wealthy streets.
The mythical place that we're creating is very much New York in the late 70s, when it was just coming out of its worst period of decay.
I feel like our production design should get all the awards.
So the idea of introducing more handheld and being on the streets and having the camera swing around and be in a place that felt as rich and alive as what we wanted our Gotham to be.
This is one of those moments, you know, where you gotta ask yourself, what kind of life do I want?
The Penguin as a character has often been portrayed as this supervillain that is like smart and rich, looking down kind of on the rest of the people. We thought it would be interesting to turn that on its head.
I was Carmine Falcone's right hand. You think it'd mean something, you know, a couple of thank yous, wouldn't I?
This is a character that wants to be revered, recognized by all, but in particular those closest to him.
The city is meant to be yours, sweetheart. What are you gonna do to get it?
The two main criminal families in Gotham are the Moroni family and the Falcone family. Alberto Falcone is fashioning himself as the new leader of the Falcone family.
And then introduce...
Incredibly industrious. It's like many people in the world, she is a threat.
You've really moved up in the world, haven't you? She fears no one, which is why they find her so intimidating.
You know, Oz, people underestimate you, but not me. I've always known you were capable of more.
The way I viewed Oz and the way I depicted him just had a different view on masculinity, not just a man who wants power. I think he wants people's respect.
Lauren's amazing. She did such a really extraordinary job. There were certain relationships that were explored in a particular way that I hadn't in 25 years as an actor ever explored.
Trust me, it's just the beginning.
A rise to power story.
It's quite bold, it's incredibly violent. The themes explored are just extraordinarily dark.
It's been a tremendous gift to be able to explore this world, these stories, and all of these forms in a way that I don't know anyone's ever got to do in exactly the way we're getting to do.
the new kingpin of Gotham.
Colin loved the script for the Batman, but was actually a little unsure about whether or not he wanted to play the Penguin.
Matt told me about what he felt the Penguin should be. After reading Matt's script, I really got a sense of who he was.
Matt said to me, "Have you been talking to Mike Marino?" I said, "Yeah, we've been texting a little bit and sending pictures back and forth." And he said, "So has he shown you what you're going to look like?" I said, "No." And he said, "You want to see?" And I just saw this beautifully sculpted 360-degree bust. I looked at the character and I just saw history, and I saw pain, and I saw aggression, and I saw cruelty, and I saw a bit of sadness, and it was all there.
Can you imagine to be remembered like that?
Brilliance of what Mike Marino and his team created.
Each day, Colin is in the makeup about 3 hours. We actually have to flatten his hair, and then we sculpt a bald cap that glues over that, and we paint that to look like flesh. Then we glue on the neck, then the cheeks go on, the earlobes go on. There are lower earlobes that sit and hook onto his cheeks. Then we have a chin, which changes the shape. Then it's the nose with the upper lip, and his upper lip kind of pushes up, and we glue on eyebrows, giving him this bird penguin look. I thought that would be a good idea psychologically to make him look a little angrier. Later on, the hair goes on. He's got a receding hairline, and it combs back and parts to the side. And once the hair pieces are on, he's done. It's like a puzzle.
I've never done full prosthetics before. I've never been so buried beneath the artistry of someone else.
This particular incarnation of the Penguin, we thought it would be interesting to show some sort of affliction, which causes his gait to be a little penguin-like.
Something Colin and I talked about a lot is he's like, I think when I'm not around people, I limp more. And when I'm in front of people like the Falcones, I'm trying to hide it.
Maybe we don't see eye to eye on every little thing. You know, maybe you don't like me. It's fine. I'm an acquired taste.
The fact of the matter is, there wouldn't be this show if it wasn't for Mike Marino. What he created through his skill, his passion, his twisted imagination was so iconic.
For me, what has been so exciting about doing the Batman and then getting to do the Penguin is trying to think of this as a giant tapestry about Gotham, about the Batman world.
Matt's version of Gotham was very dark and gritty and felt extremely grounded. And that was really interesting to me.
There were certain kinds of aspects about the way we shot the movie that I wanted us to carry over into the series, but then the series also had to feel different because that was the Batman's point of view, and this needed to be Oz, and Oz is much more on the streets.
It was such a beautiful interpretation and their very own specific take on Gotham.
We get to see a different side of Gotham, those that are really affected by the corruption of the city.
We're really with the have-nots in our world. So we looked for a lot of arches and a lot of bridges to ground the characters underneath structures.
We watched the show, the very first shot, we're up above looking at Gotham, but immediately the camera starts to descend all the way down to street level, so low that we're looking up at the license plate.
We talked about where is Gotham? What city should we be echoing in our design? It's very grounded in New York City and New York City history, architecturally.
We focused a bit more on older architecture, but Gotham is also a city that's always under construction, which is great if you're filming in New York because everything's always under construction here.
Because we started the day after the Riddler's bombs, the flood, of course, was a very big discussion, and the seawall, and where exactly the bombs were. So we talked about the 5 levels of flooding, with 5 being the hardest and 1 being the lowest. And we talked about how each neighborhood is affected by it.
With this, they wanted to have a lot of water, a lot of rain, and when we do the wet down, it can be anything from Hudson sprayers in our hands, or if we need to actually manipulate and use pressure, then we'll attach to a water truck.
Iceberg Lounge, because it was so close to the seawall, and Crown Point are the worst neighborhoods.
We researched Hurricane Katrina, we researched floods in Germany and Spain and Europe, and really looked like immediately after a flood, what is left in the street.
I think we dumped 4 tons of dirt on that street in order to create the level of flood that we needed to create, and broken lampposts, etc. And then we broke the awning. So we found a great portion of large metal truss to put our set in. That was the challenge, was to find a location.
For the Penguin, we knew that we would have to show this world. We can't just stay down on the street. For my entire visual effects crew, I asked them, hey, anytime you see something cool on the horizon or looking down at a street in Manhattan, take a photo. This very much was super useful in designing some of our skylines. There are a few shots where we're looking high and wide.
What that madman did.
The thing we felt that made Gotham look flooded was the clash of seeing water next to things where water doesn't belong. To execute the shot, we basically rebuild the actual location in 3D, because what we do is we simulate the water and calculate all the variables of water pressure and the strength of the concrete, that at what point is the concrete gonna break, like when the freeway collapses. We knew this was a really key moment to set up for our show, that there are still parts of Gotham that are beyond getting the help they need from the flood.
Underneath the design, there is a real grounded architectural vernacular to all of it. And then we get to interpret and give it that extra special look.
What's exciting for me is to be able to have a smaller piece of terrain that just is exploring this world in all of its different facets. This is a very special and privileged experience, and it's something that's been a dream of mine really from the beginning. Gotham is a microcosm of our world. This idea of the high and the low.
I wanted to tell a class disparity story in our show, whose name's on the bridge versus who actually got their hands dirty. Batman is looking down at the city. Oz is looking up, wanting to get to that penthouse. In the comic books, the Penguin comes from money. His family's very important. It was apparent to me that Oz shouldn't be that type of character.
He doesn't have the kind of things at his disposal that the Falcone or Maroney families have. He really has to create from the ground up.
You want more and you're hungrier if you have less.
You can really look at the whole series as being about real estate.
What was exciting to me was to explore this world of Gotham, the idea of the parts of the city that are insulated, what such privilege insulates you from. These things can exist side by side.
Well, up here, it's kind of nice.
That's because you're looking far away at the rich neighborhoods. If you were out there looking back at Crown Point, you'd say, man, what a shithole.
Crown Point, though it's one of the poorer parts of Gotham, there's a lot of love there. There's a lot of vibrancy there.
The love in his life sort of comes in and around that neighborhood. You normally won't hear about his story, Victor. He doesn't really have much that he's looking forward to in life. Oz comes along and lets him see that there's more to it than what you've got ahead of you right now. I can relate to that in a way. I didn't grow up with a super fortunate financial situation. Your eyes kind of open up once you see a different world. To feel like you're making moves. You're really in the game now, the game of life.
I believe in you, kid. You got it?
Mm-hmm.
This is us.
You come from a poor neighborhood and you drive across the bridge into Bristol Township where the Falcones live, a place Victor has never been to.
Damn.
It's just emblematic of wealth. Oz comes from nothing, and here are the Falcones who have everything that he wants.
You are my driver, that is all you are, so stop talking and drive.
Introducing us to Sophia, to a woman who is the daughter of Carmine Falcone.
She's a rich mafia princess who has never wanted for anything.
If you're born into money, you don't have to struggle.
Zhao is here to see me, not my former driver. Remember that.
Gotham is this place where people can live these forsaken lives, and it creates these lives of tremendous desperation.
To feel marginalized by some physical attribute you were born with, marginalized by poverty, marginalized by struggle. Lauren did such a really extraordinary job laying those things out.
Those that are above are not taking care of the people that they make a vow to take care of.
Families are living in the dark, they're freezing.
The power imbalance needs to be and can be righted. The fat cats are across the bridge drinking their $5,000 bottles of wine.
They run shit, we eat shit. Why the hell not us?
Oz always speaks to the little guy. He appeals to them. And Oz becomes the guy who motivated these other gang members to take power.
Living in desperation and then having that chance to grab at more. It's this kind of dark American dream.
I wanted to pepper Oz's world with complicated women.
What more you got? If something happened to me...
Stop talking!
A lot of stories in the crime world, women are kind of cast aside pretty easily. They're arm candy.
You see such a tough guy story, and to understand what is this trajectory that leads to the Kingpin. The key to that whole thing is the history and relationship between Oz and his mother, Frances.
Is that what you are, Oswald? Weak little pussy boy?
One of the things that really excited us was this idea of digging into the familial relationship of him and his mother.
If my son is a nothing, what am I?
I wanted to write an interesting, complicated, tough as nails broad.
I won't let you down.
All sons need and desperately call for their mother's love and attention. But I think it's something that burns a little bit more deeply in Oz.
Get off!
He's constantly looking for his mother's approval and her love. It's kind of a painful relationship.
It's a little more intimate than people might think is perfectly healthy. It's a very lonely world. She doesn't have family. There's nothing outside of the two of them.
You promised me, Oswald, I deserve a better life.
I'm working on it.
His ambition is really sprung from his mother saying, I deserve and want more, and so do you. His self-worth is all wrapped up in his desire to have his mother express her love and affection and how proud she is of him.
Oswald, it's too much.
His trajectory and his desire to have power is so he could go home and tell his mom, look, Ma, I did it. Aren't you proud of me? That's all he wants.
The relationship with his mother is one of those things that allows this character to really come into full bloom because it so humanizes him and her.
His greatest fear, in my opinion, was that love is transactional, that there's always a cost to something, that somebody always wants something from you to give you that love and affection.
I appreciate the gesture, but this is too much.
He has a girlfriend, Eve, but he pays her, so that will ensure that she loves him because he takes care of her.
Baby, everything okay?
Yeah.
When you meet someone in childhood, there's this sort of unspoken trust that doesn't really have to be fully explained. They have that. It gets tested.
Eve, sweetheart, no one's untouchable.
Then neither are you. With Oz, she really does try to have I've got your back, you've got mine relationship, but she's willing to drop that if it serves her. As much as she wants to be a cheerleader to Oz at all times, it comes back to survival. You're putting me and my girl at risk. It's not part of the deal.
They've known each other a long time. They're both survivors. In a world of hardship, they both learned how to play a certain social system in their favor. He would like to believe she's there for him for purer reasons than maybe she is.
In my mind, she's his first sexual experience, so he trusts her. She's older than him, so there's always a little bit of hints towards being mothered, wanting an older woman to take care of him.
Where you going?
Out of my nose.
Oz never feels good enough. All of that really stems from this lack within him from the beginning of always feeling like an outsider, always feeling unlovable. It's a hole that he is voraciously digging into that can never be filled. It's also the thing that takes him to the depths of doing the worst things he could possibly do.
I loved playing the character in the film, and I just saw the potential. Get into his origin story.
When we were finishing the movie is actually when the idea to do the show came about. The idea that Colin always understood is that he would have a certain size role in the movie, and then I really wanted to build that story out.
The opportunity of doing something episodic, a morally corrupted individual with ambition seeking power in the city, that just felt like great potential for a gangster show.
Matt's version of Gotham felt extremely grounded, and to know that Oz as a character was just a man who is discounted, underestimated, and wants more for himself.
In our movie, he's a mid-level gangster, not yet the kingpin. In the show, he's on his way to becoming that.
Matt said he was thinking of a rise to power story in the vein of Scarface.
America's a hustle.
More than anything, I thought about this man from Providence, Rhode Island. He was the mayor there for 21 years. He was very corrupt, very charming, and violent, but everybody loved him because he revitalized the city. It just made so much sense to me to think about Oz in that way, and that, to me, was sort of a spark that I took and ran with. In the comic books, the Penguin comes from money. His family's very important. In what Matt created, it was apparent to me that Oz shouldn't be that type of character. You want more and you're hungrier for things if you have less.
He's lived in close proximity to great wealth. He's driven by that sense of exclusion and sense of unfairness.
I'm gonna tear down the empire from the inside out.
It's one of his greatest weapons that people don't take him serious, and so he can act in the shadows in a way that if people were fearful of him and watching him closely, he wouldn't have got the chance to operate in the way that he does.
What makes a man into the Penguin? This character that we've all held some version of in our heads since we've been kids, really.
When I first started to dissect Oz and figure out what was driving him, my realization was Oz is a man who doesn't just want power, but he wants to be loved and revered, and more than anything, loved by his mother. And so I created Francis.
You promised me, Oswald, I deserve a better life.
I'm working on it.
That's why Oz is the way he is because of her.
Rarely do you get to go to the underneath of it. Like, how did this end up being the way that they live together?
Don't you see, dear, what you did wasn't impulsive. It was instinctual.
I just don't know when it happens, when something goes from I want to take care of my mother to I want to own the world.
The only person that really has any control over Oz is his mother.
They become these beasts of materialism, but it's not quite like, I just want more nice stuff. It's darker than that.
This city isn't meant to be yours, sweetheart. What are you going to do to get it?
I always wanted to create Victor. I wanted Oz to have a mentee.
I got ambition. I can help you.
Certain people like the Falcones would see Oz as less than, but a kid like Victor, in the place that he is, would see Oz as a god. And Oz likes that.
In the face of Victor's impotence, Oz feels powerful. It feels good to him to have an underling, have somebody who's so clearly beneath him and so clearly afraid of him and so clearly has an element of reverence.
Oz gives him a chance to not only be able to make some money, but to feel important, to feel like you're making moves. He finally has a chance to be something.
You feel alive, Vic, huh? Feel a heart beating?
All of the emotional undercurrents, all of the psychology, that is the delicious thing that you get to do by having more time than you would have in a film. He does things you want to think you'd never do. By understanding him, we can see ourselves in him.
I want you to relate and empathize with him in moments, but also be equally repelled. You don't have to like him, you shouldn't like him maybe, but you want to watch this guy.
I can help you. With whatever you need, I can help.
I always wanted to create Victor. I wanted Oz to sort of have a mentee. I always found it interesting that certain people like the Falcones would see Oz as less than, but a kid like Victor, in the place that he is, would see Oz as a god. And Oz likes that, would want to keep a kid around like that.
I got ambition.
That's where you start to see who Victor is and how he kind of interacts with the world.
Victor plays a really fundamental and important role in Oz rising up through this power vacuum.
I'm gonna run this goddamn city, and I want you in on it.
Renzi is so surprising and raw and real and emotional. We needed a youthful kid who could also be believable in a crime exploration where he has to do truly violent things.
We don't have a lot of pure characters, and Victor, there's a lightness to him, a naivety in some ways. He was really close with his family. He was never involved in crime before Oz. Oz finds him when he's stealing his rims, but Victor's doing that to survive because he lost his family in the flood. So for the first time, he ends up trying to do something that would go against his mother and father's wishes if they were still around. He meets Oz.
Hey! Oh, you sons of bitches! Go, go!
Once Vic comes into Oz's orbit, Oz has this moment of empathy for Vic.
Please, please, please.
Victor has a stutter. I wanted Oz to realize that very early on and to feel a connection, that he reminds him a little bit of himself.
With his bum leg and with his scarred face, there's this way in which that's all a vulnerability, so that when Vic's stutter is revealed to Oz, it can't help but affect him.
What's your name?
It's Victor.
It was important to make sure that we were depicting having a speech impediment correctly. We worked with Mark Winsky. He really helped Renzi dissect that aspect of the character.
We worked on practicing different types of stuttering, whether that's a block like that, or a prolongation, or a repetition, and kind of having that palette to then take those things and create a stutter that's purely authentic to him.
You nervous?
No, I stutter. Where Mark really was the most helpful was in figuring out what's kind of going on in the mindset of someone who's stuttering and how that feels. And so we did a lot of stuff, a lot of calls to places, me going in public and practicing with it, just so that I could feel what it was like to go around in the world and have people look at you a certain way, so that whenever you're doing it in the show, you have an idea.
Right, I'll do the steak of,
The restaurant scene is a really big spot-on scene for the stuttering community. Victor has a lot of trouble, and the waiter fills in his sentences, which people shouldn't do, by the way.
Steak frites. Hey, don't do that. The man was speaking. Let him finish.
Having Victor hear that he can take the time that I'm getting chills thinking about the scene, but having the time that he needs and not have anybody change that is just so big and so important.
Renzi just did such a beautiful job and really embraced that aspect of the character, and it became so much a part of him. It's an interesting depiction and something that's not a limitation for him at all by any stretch. It's just part of who he is.
Fuck what they think. Let them wait. You know, take up space. You got fight in you, Vic. You gotta let it out.
Oz sees something in Victor, and the common thing I think you find with young men, why they get into crime, many of them are looking for father figures, older brother figures, and Oz was the perfect person to lead Victor into this world.
I believe in you, kid.
And over the course of that relationship, there's a turn that happens with Vic.
There's a moment where Victor is trying to figure out, should I go with this girl, Graciela, who I really love and care for, who's very emblematic of his past, or should I stick with Oz, who treats me badly half the time?
What did you have before I found you, huh, kid? You got all the opportunity in the world right fucking here.
It's an empowering feeling to be able to think that you're a part of something bigger. And you're with a guy who you've seen is pretty damn capable. Where else am I gonna get this? And so when he's thinking about, do I leave Or do I take this opportunity that I've been given? It sort of opens him up to be able to make the decision, this is the life that I want to live. This is what I want to do. Slowly and surely enough, we do get to the point where Oz starts giving him much more respect, much more responsibility. Victor takes that on and wears it kind of like a badge of honor.
Victor feels very connected to Oz and very connected to Francis. They're his new makeshift family, and he loves Oz. He would do anything for Oz. And when he goes back to Crown Point, he meets Squid again.
What's good, man? Where you been?
There's a threat to the family. He realizes that Squid's not going to go away, and so in a split-second decision, he pulls out his gun and he shoots and kills Squid.
There's really no going back now in terms of his own morality. He loses a bit of himself in that moment.
He aims incorrectly, he clips his neck, and Victor has to watch what he did. Just to show how imperfect Victor is at this. He's not a skilled killer, but this is the first person he kills.
I'm sorry.
It's also an evolution. When you're in a gang, if you're part of a crew, if you're in the mob, your first kill's a big deal.
The trajectory of where he was at the beginning to this person who now can kill others, you see the consequence emotionally, but you know this is now part of his DNA. This is who's become.
Renzi, he had this innocent beauty, but he also had a toughness that you could believe on an exploration.
Jesus, I need a chance.
His is some of the most moving stuff.
They're gonna tell stories about us one day, kid. Victor Aguilar, Oz Walker.
When Sophia first gets out of Arkham, rumors are swirling around. Here comes this woman who clearly is insane. She's the hangman. We don't know what that means.
My first conversations with Lauren had to do a lot with Sophia's history and her journey throughout the show.
It felt right to see her origin, so we understood where she came from.
Mom? No. Sophia.
Sophia's depicted very, very differently in the comics. She really loves her father. I wanted to do something different with Sophia. So I thought a lot about Rosemary Kennedy, who was the forgotten Kennedy daughter. Her father really despised some of the actions she took.
She's fucking crazy.
At that time, women were often put away when they were not insane. In the comics, there's so many characters that come out of Arkham, but all of them are depicted as psychopaths. And I was like, well, what would it be like to be in Arkham but be a sane person? What would happen to you if you were there for 10 years? Who would you become then? What would you find within yourself?
Sophia, before everything went awry, didn't question what her world was. She is involved in all of these different charities and all these different organizations. She's the apple of her father's eye and was really celebrated.
He knew that she was the smartest and the most wily. He wanted her to really carry on the family. She was probably more prepared than Alberto.
But I also think that there's a lot that she's like really, really pushed down. Her father never wants to talk about anything, and no one ever talks about her mother's passing.
A young woman named Yolanda Jones committed suicide last week. There's actually been a number of women like Miss Jones. Most of these women worked for businesses owned by your father.
And it's Sophia unraveling that truth and realizing not only that her father has been killing these sex workers, but that he did it to her mother too. And Carmine, seeing that his daughter knows that about him, is unacceptable. And so to punish her, he puts her in Arkham State Hospital.
Get off me!
You're under arrest
Wait.
for the murder of Yolanda Jones,
What?
Taylor Montgomery.
Oh my God, I didn't kill anyone!
Carmine betrays Sophia in such a profound way, and it is the thing that turns her into the hangman.
She was dealt a very difficult hand because she was entrapped, she was set up.
This very, very dark and compelling history about the betrayal gave Sophia a really powerful arc.
She's one of the most complex female characters that I've seen in a very long time.
I'm gonna die in there!
It's a huge fall for her because she goes from like this princess of the family to being alone in solitary confinement, treated horrifically and not visited by anyone. Like an immediate cutoff from this entire world. She's punished so thoroughly.
I am innocent!
this changes her forever. She never comes back. Something so much bigger than her takes over in order to survive.
We see what it is to be a young, spoiled woman and what she turns into. She truly becomes her own villain.
She comes out primed, like a real taut wire, just a fuse ready to explode.
To new beginnings. Chantani.
Oswald Cobb, remember him? What a little bitch.
When Lauren came in and she pitched what she wanted to do in the first episode, the Alberto thing was one of the first things that she pitched. Dylan and I were just like, that's it. That was a really, really brilliant stroke.
We wanted to get into Oz's psychology. We're planting seeds that there's something a little bit more disturbing there. It was really important to make sure that you understood Oz and the man he further becomes because of who he is inside.
He tells the story about Rex Calabrese. Alberto looks at that and does the one thing you should never do with Oz. He laughs at him.
They probably do share a similarity, Alberto and Oz, in that neither of them have been taken very seriously. Alberto doesn't see what might be encroaching from any particular side, which is a great weakness when you're living in the kind of worlds that Alberto would be inhabiting.
Alberto steps on that third rail, and when he's mocked for that, that's where you see the deep rage and impulsiveness of Oz. Oz is basically recovering from what he's done to Alberto, really for the rest of the series.
This being the first scene of the show was important to us in that fact that it showed Oz doing something brash that he quickly regrets. And then kind of launches him into the story that we're gonna watch in the series.
Hey! Oh!
I'm sorry, I'm
Try to steal my shit!
Please, please, please.
It wouldn't have been that much of a thing to just kill this kid, but Oz has a disability, and he sees this disability in Vic.
I think he hears it in the stutter, and Oz, with his leg, understands that Victor maybe hasn't been given a bunch of chances in life.
Now, you wanted my car so badly. You can drive.
Oz is a very peculiar character, and Victor is our entree into who Oz is.
Aqua Paradise.
It's nice.
Yeah, it's nice.
He really likes those air fresheners. And yet he also murdered the Falcone boss in the first 5 minutes of the show. And you can't quite put your finger on who this man is. And that's the point. That's the fun of it.
In that night, which would feel like this kind of pressure cooker, there would be a turn. The seed has been planted. Maybe Vic is not dead.
Whoa, whatever you need, whatever it is. Jesus, I need a chance.
His relationship with Oz evolves, and that's really more where you start to see who Victor is and how he kind of interacts with the world.
There you go. We have a relationship built on status.
I got ambition.
Teacher, student, master, mentor.
Well, maybe it'll be useful, keeping you around.
That's where the relationship really starts, is give me a shot.
Sophia. Upended everything. Oz is kind of barely holding all this together. It feels like he's going to get away with it. And then suddenly there's a force of nature that enters, and that is Sophia.
Sophia would show up basically over his shoulder. We wanted to make sure that she had the power there.
They have so much history between them, and they both know the score.
Sophia, I thought you were still at,
Arkham?
Yeah.
No. I've been rehabilitated.
She comes out like a real taut wire, just a fuse ready to explode, but has to really keep a lid on it.
Sophia's presence is more dangerous than it may have been if Alberto and Oz didn't play out the way it does. She is a threat. She's a potential obstacle between Oz and him realizing what he wants to realize in this world.
In the comic book lore, you don't want to start with Oz as the Kingpin. You want to see how he becomes the Kingpin. Sophia also wanting and having the same ambitions. How does she become a counterpoint and a real opposition to Oz?
Are you nervous, Oz?
Nervous?
I'd hate for you to feel nervous with me.
Oz really is a character that gets backed into situations and does his best work in figuring out how to save himself.
People underestimate you, but not me. I've always known you were capable of more.
By the time that he goes to visit his mom and is really at that point decided to run away, she talks him out of that and says, like, no, you should use this to gain power.
She's ferociously involved. It's almost like she wants to give him her blood, and her blood is very ferocious, and her blood is very fearless. When she sees any weakness in her son, she can barely stand it. Do you hear the words coming out of your mouth?
Yeah.
How weak they sound? It's just the two of them. So they have this strange little pact.
What you did wasn't impulsive, it was instinctual.
Even though he would want to be revered and respected, he just needs his mom to say she loves him.
This city is meant to be yours, sweetheart. What are you gonna do to get it?
He then designs a long shot way to see if he can navigate through all of these very dangerous kind of scenarios that he's gonna have to navigate through.
You start to understand how Oz dodges and weaves and gets through things, and he barely scrapes by the end of 101, and it felt very emblematic of Oz as a character. Inside Man is when we start to unpack Oz playing two sides. He's playing the Maronis and he's playing the Falcones. Sophia walks into a very misogynistic situation. I mean, the mob's never been very friendly to women, and rarely are women inside the room. And so you realize how difficult this is for her. She's coming back home and not feeling welcome. Home is its own form of jail for her.
We get the sense that the story that everyone else tells about Sophia isn't necessarily the right story, but it is the one that has stuck.
At the beginning of 102, Sophia walks in and Oz sees somebody that he can align himself to. He's always playing all these different characters to his advantage and switching, on a dime.
There should be you in there, calling the shots.
Oz is still trying to navigate his way through the aftermath of Alberto's death. As he's doing that, he realized that he can leverage the Maroni family as a tool in order to gain more power.
One ends where he gives Sal his ring back, but he's actually setting Sal up to have to take the fall for Alberto Falcone's death. And meanwhile, he's promising the drops business to the Maronis.
I claim, Alberto, you make good on the drops you promised.
Sal's easily manipulated. He knows Oz is up to something.
What is it you're really after, Oz?
Sal looks like he's in control and he knows exactly what he's doing and trusting Oz, but Mrs. Maroney knows better.
Sal fell in love with a woman from Iran, and she learned to love his Italian culture. To me, that felt more unique and made it more specific than other depictions.
Obviously, Sal was so smitten by her, he's obsessed with her, he loves her still, and he's replaced his entire Italian mafia family with the Persian mob, which I just think is so terrifyingly original.
Nowadays, Persians/Iranians are big players in the international arena. Therefore, I think they now can be a part of the mafia life in Gotham City as well. Why not?
The FEMA heist is a plan fully designed by Oz. If everyone did what they were supposed to do, he would have been able to get out having all his enemies killed.
Penguin!
There's a wrench in the plan in that Johnny Vitti decides to put him into the one car he doesn't want to be in.
We're adding artillery to every vehicle. It's your operation means you're on the truck.
He can no longer operate from the sidelines. He has to make a choice, kill all of the Maronis or kill all the Falcones.
Let's head out!
So for FEMA Heist, our team developed these flash guns where they look like regular guns, but they have an enormously bright camera flash that could be triggered by the actors so that they can wield it and feel that flash of light as they pull the trigger. We felt this was a really unique approach to doing gunfire because for safety, it helps us not use real guns on set.
After watching the FEMA heist, it felt that there would be something more playful for Oz, and we found this great Bobby Darin song. Call Me Irresponsible seemed so perfect for how violent the sequence was.
Castillo! I'm inclined to pursue. Castillo, let's go! Let's go!
I think the Bobby Darin song is brilliant because it says, this is who this guy is. Even though we're experiencing this heist, it's really the story of Oz and why he is able to survive.
Whoa, whoa, hey! You gotta adapt. You gotta respond to the environment, the situation. You gotta think on your feet. You gotta be quick.
This is our show. This is the type of stuff we're gonna do. Can be extremely violent. We can also have a wink and a nod. Oz is charming, and he's also despicable. It's all sort of in service of Oz as a character and creating that sort of blanket tone for the show. In episode 3, Sophia and Oz really team up together, and it's also Victor's episode. I always viewed Victor as the heart of our show. Aguilar is a family name. I wanted to represent Latinos because I'm half Mexican, but Renzi's Dominican, and so I made Victor half Mexican and half Dominican, and that was something that was really important to me to see depicted.
He's a 17-year-old kid from Crown Point, not necessarily the best circumstances, really one of the worst neighborhoods in Gotham, and we find out exactly what happened with his family.
Que Dios te bendiga. ¿Cómo te fue el día?
Bien. That's the first time we see Victor outside of the influence of Oz. It feels separate from everything else in Gotham. Good man. It's very golden in color, and the family is very warm and introduces us to the love that Victor had, and then we watch him lose it.
And that leaves him basically orphaned in a pretty desperate situation.
I'm sorry.
Which is right when he runs into Oz.
Don't move, you twat-faced little prick!
Talk about a power vacuum. I mean, there's an emotional and psychological and existential vacuum in Vic's life. Now Vic is without, he's a man alone. The two of them are men alone in this kind of broken world.
We never discussed your salary. What do you say? We start you on $1 a week, huh?
1,000 a week?
Someone living in desperation and then having that chance to grab at more. It's this kind of dark American dream that so many gangster stories are about. And there's a moment where Vic could run away.
Vic wants to be with his girlfriend, Graciela, who we're finding out about for the first time. We knew he's lost his family. We didn't know what happened to his girlfriend.
You could come with me.
I'm not sure that he'd let me go.
Who, your boss?
He has this crossroads choice. He feels, in a way, as if he has been kidnapped by Oz.
Setting up that anxiety, those are like the kind of connections that go from the flood, then that scene between Vic and Graciela where he has a chance to get out, and then the panic attack. That Pebble-Bliss Vial connection was a huge thing in bringing the whole story and the whole episode together. There's been so many permutations of that scene and how much we see Victor, flashbacks, other dancers on the floor. It's been a real challenge, but it's also my favorite scene.
You were more than your father ever had.
My dad would be ashamed of me.
You wanna know what's shameful, Vic?
Working your whole goddamn life, having nothing to show for it.
That scene, it's a heat of the moment. Victor was vulnerable enough earlier in that episode to open up about his parents, and Oz kind of throws it back in his face. Of course, first instinct, I'm out of here. I can go off with this girl that I love and go start a new life. Then screw you, that's what I'm doing. I don't want to be here under the gun the rest of my life.
And you're starting to realize that Oz actually has developed feelings for Vic, that he has a kind of affinity. He thinks of him almost like a family member. Then there's a turn that happens with Vic.
He comes to the realization that he's not necessarily under the gun. He finally has a chance to be something, to feel important, to feel like you're really in the game. Victor starts to see it as more of an opportunity.
One of the things that allows Sophia and Oz to kind of come together in those initial episodes is that there are these characters who everyone looks to as if there's something other about them, and so you see them deeply wanting a kind of vengeance.
Was it worth it?
What's that?
What you did to me.
There was a history between the two of them, a direct history, and there was a kind of a sense of kinship.
They make a good team. They both complement each other and bring out sides of each other that I think the other one needs.
I'm fucking sorry for everything that's happened to you. You meant something to me. Still do.
that always was an important scene for all of us, and that we all knew that the door to Oz's humanity is still open, and he's still able to reach out and try to connect with another person.
Don't move. Don't fucking move.
Oz, you think he can play us?
You realize how difficult this is for her. The one guy she thinks she maybe can trust, even though she knows that that's a dicey situation out of the gate, he screwed her over.
We gotta fucking go now! What about Sophia? Fuck! Leave her!
My mom said he did bad things.
She's right.
I always knew I wanted to do a Sophia-centric episode. I view Sophia as the closest thing we have to a hero on our show. She's also not. She's complicated. So to unpack her, it felt right to see her origin.
To meet this woman and take her back through this journey to her original trauma.
Mom?
And then to crack that and open it and open it and open it until you get down to the heart and we find a deep understanding for who she has become and what she will then do. I wanted to start with light in Gotham so that we see this world of innocence in Sophia's perception.
I know that there is an explanation.
Confused, sick.
As Sophia's world starts to fall apart, we wanted to drive a very strong contrast between that world that we had created before and the world that she is now entering.
Get off me!
You're under arrest.
Did you do this?
We find her coming to, and when she comes to, she finds another piece of the wall of her parents' bedroom.
We wanted to make the scenes feel repetitious, but then also only utilizing certain angles once or twice so that you would feel in that state unstable. In the mess hall, we wanted to create a sense of dread in the tones by the bleakness of it.
When my background players all arrived, I empowered them with the truth, which is that they are the ones who make the world real. If the people in that environment aren't truly in the environment, it won't happen.
Every time they would bring me through the crowd of women, every single person was so invested in who they were. I mean, I was like still getting chills thinking about it. It didn't feel like we were making a TV show. And those scenes really show what it brings out in people when you hurt them.
We decided to keep the camera quite still up until when she attacks Magpie. We chose to stay on Sophia to connect her to the violence.
I told you I'm fucking innocent!
For the scene where Sophia wakes up in Dr. Rush's office, Helen and I wanted to have it feel as if everything was a dream.
So now everything is accumulated and she knows that every member of her family betrayed her, not just her father. She's being reborn at that moment.
Makeup became a war paint statement. When you really look at it, you're like, it's almost like she's wearing a mask. And that's what you want the audience to see.
I don't fit into this family anymore. So tomorrow I'm starting a new life.
So Sophia, without fully realizing it, wants power in part because she wants to fulfill something that she never was able to achieve because she was thrown into Arkham.
How like sharks can't stop moving or they sink. It's that relentless pursuit of justice.
In episode 5, we really get to see the dark heart that beats inside Oz's chest.
The situation is so stiff and so dangerous. I can hear my heart pounding because at any given moment something horrible may happen. I'm getting my son back, but on the other hand, Nadi already knows that this is why I was afraid of. This is the end.
Oz stands there and watches with morbid fascination.
That's a part of him that we haven't really seen.
Sal is a complete sociopath, but does love his family with the kind of passion with which he would chop somebody's head off, you know, if they crossed that family.
I am offering you an alliance. We kill Oz, and then we take over the city.
Notoriously, the Falcones and Maronis are always at odds in the comics. I thought it was interesting and seems right to have Sophia knowing that the Falcones have wronged her just as much as the Falcones have wronged the Maronis, to try to team up with Salvatore Maroni to align the powers that they have to get Oz. Sophia's not beholden to what her father would have wanted for her anymore. She's not beholden to anybody.
Sophia, she comes into the morning after with a plan, very much in control.
Johnny Vidi's not among the dead. Any idea where we might find him?
I'm sorry, no.
You can think that she is insane. Arkham could make you insane, but she's very smart. Her mind is ticking right along.
I need untraceable cash. I know that my father would have kept it somewhere close.
He's one of the last living people who knows all of it. There's a part of him that actually has a little bit of conflict with how she was wronged by the family. But he also does think she's frickin' nuts.
There's such history between them because he bore witness to what happened to her and he also did nothing.
She was beautiful, your mom. She had that laugh when you got her going and knock you out.
That scene is so dark, but it's also beautiful in a way because it's these two people actually talking about the person they both lost. How sad that they can only talk about that in the last moments of his life.
My father's legacy is dead. I am a gigante.
Let's not be rash here.
She wants to own this part of her past that rejects the sort of dark patriarchy of her father.
In the comics, it's Sofia Falcone Gigante because she marries into a Gigante family.
We're chasing him. We're trying to catch up to what's going on.
Look, I got a lot of heat on me. I need you to get my ma out of there.
He has killed Taj and Nadia. That's a real screw up by Oz. He's afraid Sophia's gonna find out about his mother and use her against him. That is his big Achilles heel.
Crown Point is a place where Victor grew up that he doesn't want to go back to. It brings about painful memories.
Crown Point is the worst impacted by the flood. So not only do they get the most water, do they get the most damage, but they are also the lowest economic area of Gotham and the most neglected after the flood. When she walks into the apartment, she's very disappointed because it reminds her so much of where she brought up the boys. We wanted this particular apartment to feel lived in but neglected. So you will see elements of the family that lived there before and abandoned it after the flood. Mentally, for Frances's progression, this is a real downward spiral for her.
What's wrong?
I'm alone.
The status of Eve's apartment as a safe place for Oz changes in episode 5.
Me and the girls. You dangled us in front of her.
I didn't dangle you.
Eve is no fool. She's there for her girls. She is Mother Hen. She's super protective.
Eve and her girls, maybe the strongest family unit we have on the show.
She's tremendously afraid of how all of this is going to backfire.
I need you to fix this.
That's what I do. I fix things.
He's bringing the hangman very close to home. That is extremely problematic for Eve.
She's done being his safe space.
Oz, I'm not going with you.
Everything he plans for goes awry. He loses control to the point where he's breaking vases in Eve's apartment.
She deeply cares about him, but not at the cost of herself.
Eve rejects him. When he climbs into bed with his mom, this handheld camera movement becomes the stillness where you think, okay, here we are, now it's gonna be all right. And the opposite happens. She quietly decimates him.
What kind of man can't take care of his own mother?
He does everything to take care of her, and it's not enough. The women in his life push him away when he goes for comfort.
It just kills him. He's constantly looking for his mother's approval and her love.
He's at this really low point, and then he finds a jars full of coins.
Hey kid, let's go.
We, as the audience, we don't know where we're going. He does.
Oz starts to realize that there's potential for his operation there.
You know what thrives in a place like this?
Mushrooms?
Bingo.
It's the first up moment for Oz in the whole episode.
Come episode 6, Sal and Sophia team up to align the powers that they have to get Oz.
It's unthinkable The man that she was raised to believe is their number one enemy. He's so warm to her and ironically fatherly. You want this chopped?
Sure.
I always thought of it as a father making a grilled cheese for his daughter late at night.
When he finds out what happened to Nadia and Taj, his world falls apart. Sophia comes in and kind of rescues him from that pit of despair and gives him purpose again. The only thing he wants to do is kill that guy.
It's a great strategic tactic. It puts Oz on his back foot. They're circling back near where Oz grew up in Crown Point. It's a good place to hide because sadly, no one in the city seems to care about Crown Point.
Now you all right?
Oz is so despicable. You kind of given up hope of having any sympathy for him. And then you see him with his mom, and you see him so delicately and gently pull her out of the water. Here was an opportunity to really get to the crux of what their relationship was about.
I need you to help me. You gotta help me die.
She has to tell him that she realizes what's going on.
Say you'll do it. You mean it. Because you love me.
All right. I'll do it. The helplessness of that for anyone, but for a woman like that, it's just horrifying.
Put the blame on me. Put the blame on me.
The reprise of the music is something that Matt came up with. They both want to go back to an earlier part of their lives, and obviously they can't. The close-ups keeps you out of the realm of reality. It kind of keeps you in the world of fantasy, even though there's the reality of his dirty fingers that you constantly see, which is, I think, a really great detail.
That reminds me of Paulie's Diner, don't it, Ma?
When they come down to sit and have the breakfast together, there was this sense of a routine.
Ma, we ain't gonna be here much longer. Not with all the cash we got coming in. Ain't that right, Vic?
Oh yeah, big money. The writing of the scene, that was purposeful to kind of lull us into a sense of calm, like are we watching a family discussion?
Thank you, sweetheart. You're a good boy.
Victor feels very connected to Oz and very connected to Frances. They're his new makeshift family. He's hardened a bit, carrying a gun, and he meets Squid again. He is a bad guy, always watching Victor.
Yo, where you getting your money from, Victor?
He brings up Frances. He brings up knowing that he saw this older woman. He could end up harming Frances. He can end up harming the operation, end up telling Sal and Sophia where they are, and Victor cannot let that happen. When Victor tries to go to Oz, Oz is not available emotionally, so Victor knows he has to take care of the Squid problem by himself.
Where your people at?
That scene, it's not covered so much in close-ups. It's a little bit wider, because you kind of want to see the relationship between the two. But the thing was, when does Vic turn to the dark side?
He gets to that situation and it's not going the way he planned at all. Very quickly, he has to make a very big decision, and it's a huge turning point. There's really no going back now. He's taken the life of someone that he's known for years and years and years since he was a child.
I'm sorry.
And he sees him dying in front of him. That's not an easy thing to process at all.
And then Victor goes to Oz. There's a really beautiful, lovely, quiet moment between them.
You've done the right thing. Protected those you care about.
I think it's a really beautiful scene. Oz sort of softens up and is there for him because he knows that Victor needs that.
That actually, I think, is one of our darker moments.
It gets easier.
And it's a little bit like, welcome to this life. And the fact that he says it gets easier means that you're going to kill more and more people and you'll stop feeling what you're feeling right now. It was important to me to have Eve and Sophia meet because I always felt like that dynamic was really intriguing. Eve has always been a little afraid of Sophia and knew some of the women that died and presumed that Sophia is the one who killed them.
What? Didn't recognize me? I don't even know how I would have approached the character had that scene not be there, because it's such a sort of deconstructed version that you get to see of her that suddenly everything else has context.
Sophia feels so free at this point that I think she looks at Eve with judgment in terms of like, how sad for you that you still have to perform, that you still have to pretend to be this thing.
It was a very long scene, 5 pages, and we really wanted to make it as dynamic as possible. So we used the space as best we could, and we kept it moving, and we gave Kristen a reason to move, which kind of worked with the dialogue and with what she wanted to do in the scene.
Dressing like this. Is it for you or your client?
Depends.
Oz ever seen this version of you?
Sophia gets to see Eve in a way that we've never seen her before. Completely raw, real. There's no role play happening. So she's definitely attempting, I think, to present as though this is going to be an honest exchange, while there is still part of her that's going to try her damnedest to find her way out. Those women meant nothing to you. They were family to me.
You still think I'm the hangman? He never told you? My father killed those women. Oz knew.
And that is the turn in the scene where Kristen actually confronts her face to face for the first time. And then they finally start talking to each other.
It's quite a surprise to Eve that she's been betrayed by Oz. And I think there's this very quick recalibration as to how then to handle Sophia. Because if he's willing to throw me under the bus, then what am I doing protecting him?
You were his alibi. You knew. Not at first, but yeah. Just leave my girls alone. That's why you asked me here. To save them from the hangman. That's not who you are, right?
Eve and her girls, maybe the strongest family unit we have on the show.
It breaks Sophia's heart when she realizes that Eve has more of a family than she ever will, and I think it really hits home her own loneliness, and it catches her.
And I think when I see that vulnerability, there's something about the woman in me that has a moment of compassion. If I take her at her word and she isn't the hangman, then she's been no more used as I've probably been. So that puts us in the same boat.
It's two women from sort of different sides of Gotham coming together and realizing something about Oz, having a connection and a bond.
Throughout this show, they have been pitted against each other, but ultimately understand all we've got is each other as women in this sort of world.
Crown Point.
You deserve your shot. But where you got that information?
It'll stay between us.
Oh, look at this face. My big, strong bull of a boy.
I always knew that we wanted to do a backstory of Oz to better understand who he is as a man now. I thought Oz should have two brothers who passed away, and that all of the love that his mother Frances had for all three then went into one child.
Part of this drive for who he is stems to a trauma that he's always explained came from the loss of his brothers. But then you come to understand that this was a story of his own creation, and really his desire to have his mother all for himself.
He loves his brothers, but he loves his mom way more.
I think he probably all his life feels a little bit broken, and so he's constantly looking for his mother's approval and her love. I think he's seen very up close and personal how his mother has toiled to provide for him and his brothers and wants to give her a better life.
Rain's coming, we gotta get inside.
And so the boys go down into the tunnels to play flashlight tag.
Ozzy, you're it first. Hey, I can hear you down there.
In his mind, they go down the ladder into a deeper part of the tunnel because they know it's hard for him to get down there. That's not true, but that's what he thinks because he personalizes things.
Hey, Oz, you okay?
Screw you guys!
I'm sorry, Oz.
And this is reflective of what we see from Oz in 101 with Alberto. Alberto demeans him, and Oz impulsively shoots him. What we reveal in 7 is there's a similar situation.
Have fun getting out!
As the water begins to rise and he knows the rain's coming down and he has every opportunity to stop it, he lets that impulsive act become permanent.
Please let us out, please.
We're trapped down here!
It's not that he actively kills his brothers. It's that he actively does nothing to stop it.
Where are your brothers?
They went to the movies.
Why didn't you go?
I wanted to be with you. When he's finally wrapped up and they're, sitting on the couch watching a movie together with no brothers taking the affection that he loves and wants and needs. The life that he's always dreamt of is finally his,
In Top Hat, when Fred Astaire is play acting, shooting with the machine gun and killing all his co-dancers, Oz raises an eyebrow like, ooh, I like this. And I just thought that was a very nice juxtaposition of what was going on. And And we really wanted to drive home that he was clearly making this decision.
It is really sad and pretty twisted, if you ask me, but I think that's the moment he starts rising into the villain that he is in present day. But I think that he does feel a bit of guilt, and he's like, this is my purpose. I need to take care of my mom for what I've done to make it up.
And so key to who he is this deep emotional pact with his mother.
And that, more than anything, is the thing that compels him to move through the world with the single-mindedness that he moves through the world with.
You deserve the best life. And I'm gonna get it for you.
Francis Cobb. That's your name, right?
The scene between Sophia and Francis when they first meet kind of felt like a boxing match.
A thing that I hadn't really expected was how delighted part of Francis is by this ferocious animal that is Sophia. But she's also not going to give her 1 inch.
The two of them evolving to sitting across from each other, which causes Francis to have one of her episodes, worked out really nicely and felt super organic.
I wanted to do something different with Francis. So I started to think about dementia in general, or Alzheimer's. And then I did more research and learned about Lewy body dementia, which is a very particular kind. It is misdiagnosed as Parkinson's often because people have tremors. It's a strange disease because you can be totally with it 1 minute and then the next, just forgetful, and you also have hallucinations.
You should be scouring the streets, for Christ's sake. That's your job, ain't it?
I think Sophia's really interesting in that she toggles between sympathy, curiosity, sadism. You kind of on your heels with like, what is she up to?
Yeah, you get the fuck away from me.
When she goes in to talk to Gia, one of the interesting things is that as a set, we rebuilt Arkham to be that space. So subconsciously, you might have felt like you were in the same space, and it was definitely supposed to mimic Arkham.
There's a lot that this show explores with like family cycles. Sophia turns Gia into Sophia.
Did you kill them? My mom and my dad?
She's lying to Gia. And then there's the moment where she realizes Gia has been cutting herself and that everything that she's doing, she was done to as well. And that she has to give Gia the truth.
Everyone in our family deserved it. In Sophia's mind and heart, she's doing the right thing. She really believes, I'm giving you a better life than this family ever could have, and you can start fresh.
From her conversations with Gia and her conversations with Francis, she starts to realize that she has been playing the same game her father has wanted from her.
He put me in an institution. And the second I got out, I walked right into another one.
Getting rid of this and shedding her skin of all of these people and all of this trauma is actually the healthier thing for her.
I want to be free. And I want Oz to feel pain. Real pain.
The rug gets pulled out from under him.
Filthy piece of shit!
We wanted it to feel real rough, super violent. And Sal is backlit and he just looks so fucking vicious with that light coming through his blonde hair.
Listen up, everybody. Oswald Cobb is no longer in charge.
The tunnels, it's his past and his present coming together. This is the place where his brothers died. And yet he has no problem setting up shop there. It's somehow the safety of that past and everything he's experienced is where he chooses his hideout to be.
This place is filthy.
It's Oz's turf. He knows he can survive and he knows he can resist. So he's nodding to the various of his people.
The violence is quick and decisive. All he wants is Oz head on a plate.
No.
Fuck! Sal's death was very unexpected, and Oz's reaction was unexpected.
You're supposed to destroy me, Sal! You know, show me what a big man you are, what a fucking big man you are!
You know, it's like young Oz, that same energy. Then he gets so upset that he shoots the dead body. He definitely was truly disappointed that he wasn't making him take his last breath.
It's kind of the perfect end, I have to say. Sal is all emotion and all heart, and eventually his heart bursts from rage and loss.
Oz's discovery and the misdirect of him thinking that that's his mother under the coat in the back of the car, that moment, and Oz's face before he pulls that over, what he thinks he's going to see. That was one of the more difficult sequences to do. There's something about Colin when he's in a scene that is so fantastic. You don't want to say cut because it's just so believable. He gets his hands scratched on the rocks. He lets his knees get scratched up on the rubble, and then he crawls up into the light. He probably relishes because it makes him act better. That's the kind of actor he is. That's why he's a movie star.
I'm gonna get you out of the East Side, Ma. Put you up somewhere real nice. In a penthouse like you want, with a view of the whole friggin' city.
Colin sent me The Ballad of Reading Jael by Oscar Wilde, and in it, one of the quotes is a greater little thing, and it's about how each man destroys the thing he loves. And so, given what happens in the finale, I thought it was an apt title for it. The top of episode 8 is Frances's entree, and we finally see some of Frances's backstory and the fact that she knew what Oswald did to her sons the whole time.
I got the devil in my house, Rex.
Well, then maybe let him go.
What Oz doesn't know is that she's asked Rex to kill him for her. And so she says, we're going out. And then they go to a jazz club. But what Oz sees that as is a celebration of he has his mom back. Oz sits with Frances in a booth and he tells her,
I know you miss him, Ma.
And then he turns around and he's so happy to be with his mom. That moment is meant to be just a gut punch. Like something's wrong with this kid. I think it's always a question of nature versus nurture. I know Frances has shaped him, but I also know Oz shaped Frances too. She made a choice when she chose to keep him alive, and so she made a deal with the devil. So there was a darkening by Frances because of Oz as well.
Don't give up on me.
She's just like, I don't have to do this tonight. And she just takes one step at a time. And then we find them in this knot all those years later.
One of the things that Lauren did so brilliantly was the idea of the way that Oz understands the story versus the way that we come to understand. And this, of course, becomes a key aspect that Sophia ends up being able to exploit.
Sophia brings Frances back to this rundown jazz club that has a darkness that we haven't really seen in any other instance.
It's decayed and the chandelier's fallen from the Riddler's palms from the shaking. It's almost like an earthquake hit it. I pitched Lauren the theme of the jungle. Gotham is like a jungle. It's a dangerous place. And I felt that the club could play with that theme, but in a fanciful way. So it's a very evocative place.
Sophia has this very sophisticated group therapy session where all he has to do is this one thing and he doesn't have the cojones to do it.
Just say it, tell her.
It's just your disease talking, Ma.
I hate you. I hate you for what you did. I never stopped hating you. All these years, the sound has never come out. That's like, my babies are dead sound.
I shouldn't let Rex kill you when I had the chance.
Colin and Dee Dee are both such beasts, and what they had to do and say to each other, it's like this ultimate unmasking. But that Sophia is witnessing him hearing things from his mother that he can never unhear.
You're the goddamn devil.
Is enormously satisfying. There's nothing better. Up until it all sort of goes haywire.
Sophia decides to leave Gotham behind, but first, before she goes anywhere, she needs to hurt Oz. It all seems great until everything goes to hell.
In thinking about where that scene should be, we ended up landing on the idea of an airport because it was so great to see Sophia almost get away with it.
I have always said this show is a tragedy, and so that's where you really start to feel it. What we wanted to do is Oz drive her towards the water under a bridge. It's the Elliott Bridge that's very emblematic of our class disparity in Gotham. I always knew Sophia would end up back in Arkham and that there would be a final Oz and Sophia showdown. This is a show about Oz. It's called The Penguin. And you know in some form he's going to rise above in some way.
It is a fate worse than death for her to go back to that place. He really turns the tables, and there is no worse thing to happen to her.
Oz wants to hurt her in the way that she has hurt him. And in his mind, once you mess with his mom, there's no going back. He's going to make sure Sophia's punished. Towards the end of the show, Victor has seen Oz at his most vulnerable. The two of those guys have been through everything together. Someone seeing his vulnerability feels like a weakness. And in Oz's opinion, he cannot achieve what he needs to achieve if he has those weaknesses around.
For him to be betrayed by the person that he considers family now, after we have finally done this thing, we got to the top of the game. It made me, reading the scripts, go, wow, this guy's worse than I thought.
It wasn't for nothing.
The fact that he goes to such extremes because he's so broken, that's the tragedy of the story.
It's Oz really in that moment when he kills Victor, killing his own heart and becoming a monster.
Oz at the end of this show, he's not the Oz we left in the movie. He's progressed in his criminality.
For me, it was always Oz and his mother. Oz needs his mother's love. He will get to the top, but he will not have his mother's love. She ends up in a state she never wanted to be in, that he knew she never wanted to be in, but he cannot let go of her.
The story's about having to fully stare into what that desire actually gets you, which is less than nothing.
It all plays out through this transactional relationship where he's getting people to play the roles in the story the way he needs them to be, and you realize just how broken he is. And Eve is an incredibly key aspect to that.
Eve and Oz have a very transactional relationship, but I think they understand each other. They're both survivors.
She is in this ultimate role play for him. She's really taking on the energy of his mother, literally taking on the wardrobe, the look.
In another situation, it would have been a romantic moment, but in this series, it's a very dark moment.
Now, the woman who Oz pays to sleep with, he's made her into his mother by wearing his mother's dress. It was always having Eve dress up like his mother in that dress, which we established early, and see that Oz is delusional, that there is something darker in him than you might suspect. I knew that the goal of the series by the end was to have him rise to the top or get closer to that goal. But when he achieves power, that he's lost a lot of himself as well. I've always sought to make it feel operatic in ways, to have it feel very tragic in the end. So even when Oz succeeds and even when Oz gets everything he wants, I wanted it to feel tragic. He created his own delusion in that way. It's a very twisted way to end.
Gotham's yours, sweetheart. Nothing's standing in your way now.